Well, my watch says 4:14, but the clock says 4:15 on the wall. And I remember from school, you always had to go by what's on the wall, right? So let's call the Human Resources Committee to order. We have a few things here on the agenda. We've got the staffing report, which includes all of our summer school staff. Did anybody have any questions on the staffing report? Pages 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Member Loeffler.
I just had kind of a general question, and I'm not looking for specific numbers, but I was curious, Tim, if Mr. Swirsky, if our summer school staff and our Excel staff, about how many of them are current staff already or are kind of new, and we hope to use this as one way to get them in the door. Just curious.
Yep. There's three things going on this summer. There's extended school years, and those traditionally are our existing teachers that we have. Summer school staff is kind of a mixed group, so it's probably about half and half of existing and summer school teachers.
Any other questions about the staffing report? No? Okay. Then we have on page 8 the resolution that we previously passed. Or is it renumbered?
Well, let me just explain this. Right after the meeting on that day, one of the schools had not used all of their available funds, and they decided that they were going to restore this position with their available funds. So this was one of the people that we went through and non-renewed as a non-tenured teacher, and this is just rescinding that, so that's bringing her back into that position as if it didn't happen.
Okay. Which site is this at?
Denfeld, I believe.
Denfeld. Okay. Any questions about this, folks? Seeing none, we move on to the Principals Association Collective Bargaining Agreement.
I'm sorry, this is East, actually.
East, okay.
East, yep.
So you should have just gotten a hard copy of the Principals Agreement. There is an overview with an appendix, and there are redlined copies of the 17 to 19 and 19 to 21 agreements, which show the changes from the existing or the currently operating collective bargaining agreement. Mr. Swirsky, why don't you why don't you highlight for us what you just told me about the change?
This is the overview of any of the real major changes on there. So there's two 2-year contracts. Obviously, the dates have been changed to reflect what the current years will be in those contracts. I did put the page numbers on both of the contracts on page 6. The principals do have professional development allowances, and we did not increase that professional development allowance, but what we did do is increase the amount they can carry over from year to year. So many times what they'll do is they will save up their professional development and do a major conference or conventions, those types of things. So this allows them to be able to save up for that, but there's a maximum number, a dollar amount. Yeah. No, that's okay. Didn't see it come in. There we go. Yeah, right there. So what that did is and we've done this in the past too, it's just, it just ups the maximum that they can carry over, but it does not add to that allowance. We have not added any dollars to that allowance. On the healthcare savings plan, this is more like cleanup. There were specific ages mentioned, and there's a state eligibility for retirement to be eligible for the healthcare savings plan. And what this does is it kind of puts no age tied to it in case that the state does increase their age or whatever. We have to follow whatever the state would do. So we just changed our language. Before we had at least age 55 and 15 years of service. The 15 years of service is our rule. The age 55 was the state's. And so now they have to meet the state retirement eligibility. So we just changed the language. On number 4, Appendix C, there used to be a principal incentives program, and we have eliminated the principal incentive program and instead have added a 5th step. There used to be 4 steps to the principal's salary schedule, and we rolled those dollars into the salary schedule. That principal's incentive program, actually, before it became that, used to be part of their longevity. So they gave up their longevity in order for them to have the incentive program, and now they've given up the incentive program to roll it into a 5th step on their salary schedule. And then the increases for 17-19, the 1.5, and the increases for the 19 to 21 is 2 and 2. The principals have not met, and we usually don't put the cart before the horse here, but we're not approving it today. We will be at the school board meeting. They have not met to ratify this contract, and they will be on, I believe, Wednesday or Thursday this week.
Okay. Questions relating to this contract, these contracts? Okay, well, we'll have some opportunity to look at them now that we have them in hand, and we can address any questions to Mr. Swirsky over the course of the next week or at the meeting next week. Last item is the new position for the Early Childhood Business Manager position. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this, Mr. Swirsky?
With the dollars that have been added, the voluntary pre-K program, Head Start, ECFE, the number of things the volume of work has sort of swelled in there. What we've done is we will be eliminating a clerical position and instead creating call it an office manager position. But there's a job description that we put together that will work in terms of some of the grants that are involved, the federal funds, state funds, managing those funds. It's a higher level than what our senior clerical would be. And it's kind of it's managing a larger number of dollars and working with a little bit more independence than the current position does. So we will eliminate a clerical position. We will post this position, and it is in another unit. This one's in the non-certified business unit, where the other one was in the clerical unit, and then interview for that position and fill it.
Okay. Any questions about the new position? Member Welty?
Is this a new position?
Yes.
Okay. And who has been covering this general territory up to this point in time?
Right now, it's a clerical member who's been doing that.
Have a name?
Susan Richards.
Okay.
And it's our hope and desire that Susan, I know she will be applying for this, and she will have very good experience and background that we'll still have to go through the process.
Mm-hmm. Great. Member Lofton-Kemp?
And excuse me if you said this already, what's the timeline for hiring this position?
Our hope is to probably post it this week. We can interview, we can do everything other than fill it until after the board approves the position.
Okay. So post and then within the next few weeks. Okay, yep. Thank you.
Member Welty?
I don't have any questions, but since I came late, I do have one quick question about the resolution on the termination.
Oh, sure.
If I could ask that when the time comes.
Sure. Go ahead, Member Welty.
We have one person whose name has been pulled back and rescinded. Are there other non-tenured staff whose names might be added to this in maybe in August? Or?
At this point, no. I believe at this point, there's a good chance in August you'll see some other rehires along those lines. They'll come back in through an appointment process, but not necessarily a rescind.
What would the difference between a rehire versus, say, a recension?
Well, right after we had the meeting on the Tuesday to terminate those, there was some movement of funds within, actually it was a movement of funds over at Denfeld that made relief, so we did not have to terminate the person over at East. And as a result of that, then we rescinded the position at East.
Okay, so in other words, this person has never been terminated.
It'll be as if they've never been terminated.
And the others will be rehired after having been terminated. That's the...
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
All right, the last item on the agenda is informational on the employee harassment complaints for the fiscal year 2016-2017. And it looks like there were 4, 2 of which are resolved and 2 of which are pending.
The resolved ones, and again, this is peer-to-peer, not to deal with student to student. That will be, you'll see whatever that is in the education sessions. But the 2 open and pending were actually just filed right in the closing week of school, and we rushed to get the interviews and everything done with that, with everything else going on. So now it's just a matter of finalizing those and getting the finalization letters out to the individuals. So.
Thank you. Member Welty.
Do complaints like this go through the union and the grievance system, or is this a slightly different process?
This is a different process. It is possible, I think, in some aspects that a suit, no, I shouldn't say a suit, a complaint as this could be grievable, but in these cases, it's generally peers not getting along as, if I wanted to generalize how these come to be.
When you say peers, are we talking about people who are at the same level in the hierarchy?
I would say employees. They could be at different levels, but not reporting to each other type of a thing.
Okay. Is this a matter of like a supervisor having complaints between 2 people and working something out between?
It could be in some cases.
It could be, okay. Yeah. How does this compare with previous years?
I'd have to look at last year. We had a relatively low number last year, too. I think it's comparable. Might even be a couple less.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Seeing no other lights, that is the conclusion of the Human Resources Committee, and we'll turn it over to business.
Great. Thank you, Member Sandstead. All right, we will begin the Business Committee report. Oh, well, we'll let you guys change over. All right, we are going to jump into the financial reports. Are there any questions or anomalies? First of all, Mr. Hassler, is there anything in 1A through F that you want to highlight? I know that the APU projections are on hold as we're not currently in school, but...
Nothing new to report on those.
Okay. Members of the board, any questions on 1A through G, I should say? All right, great. If you have questions on those, I'm sure you can email staff. They do a great job of responding to us. All right, item 2, there are no bids, RFPs, or quotes. Anything as of today that would want to change? No. See a head nod, head shake, no. All right, and then we're on to item 3, new policy 534, unpaid meal charges. You're welcome to come on up, Pam. And so, Mr. Hassel, we'll start with you, and then we'll invite the fabulous Pam Bowe up to join you. Thanks for joining us today.
Certainly welcome, Pam, to our meeting this afternoon. The policy that we're bringing before you is based on an MSBA model policy. There's been a lot of attention around the country and in the state of Minnesota as it relates to unpaid meal charges and how school districts should respond to those circumstances. And so we do have a model policy that comes to us from MSBA, but we do have some modifications or adjustments as it relates to our own circumstances. Is there anything you'd like to highlight there, Pam?
It's just under the direction of USDA and the Minnesota Department of Education, Food and Nutrition Service. They asked that all policies regarding meal charging be looked at and updated. So that's what we're doing. In the past, we had a procedure, and now we're, I guess, making it more formal following the MASBO example here.
Pam, can you just review? I remember part of the discussion was that this is not outlining to say no pay, no lunch. It's, can you just highlight, give us that, the overall piece, that we won't be denying children
right.
lunches? That,
All
what's that process?
All children, regardless of their lunch ballast, will be fed a reimbursable meal at lunchtime. Breakfast is available to all students at no charge in the district, but some of the students in the paid category have had difficulty keeping up sometimes with their bills, and there's been a good deal of discussion on how to accommodate those students. So this policy is saying that we will feed all students, elementary, middle, or high school, regardless of their lunch balance, whether it's positive or negative. The only thing that a middle or high school student will not be able to purchase in the middle or high school would be an a la carte item. They would get a regular reimbursable meal, but they couldn't, if they were going to a function or something after school, they could not purchase a bottle of water or something like that. But they would be entitled to a meal.
Thank you. So we're ensuring all students are able and have access to meals no matter what. Thank you. I just want to make sure that
Yes, that's correct.
Great. Thank you so much. Member Welty?
Yeah, a couple of questions on the $50. The students can leave the schools at the end of the year with $50 owed to the district and avoid having a collection agency come after them. What is the how many regular school lunches would that be? Would that be a week's worth or 2 weeks worth, roughly?
The $50?
Yes.
Next year we'll charge $2.75 per meal in the high school and $2.50 in the elementary school.
Okay.
And last year we sent about $27,000 to collection.
Okay, and I had some questions about that too. So about $27,000 is. How does that process work? Do we hire an outside agency to be the collection agency? Do they collect some portion of, what portion of the money they collect, the $27,000, do the collection agencies get to keep?
I believe there's a percentage assigned to it.
Mr. Hassler?
I don't have that percentage off the top of my head, but that's certainly something we can find.
I'm just thinking, trying to think the magnitude of this. I presume that the people who will have the collection agencies come are people who are the most straitened financially. That may not be accurate. And this is what we collect. Do you have any idea how much we don't collect, Pam?
No, we sent $27,000 to the collection agency, and I believe I'd need to check to see what we did collect last year. We try ourselves in our department before it goes to collection. We do numerous mailings to parents, and we work with principals to see if we can get the money collected. It's our last resort. We use a collection agency.
We're going to let someone else ask a question. Member Leffler Kemp.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I do know as a parent that I get numerous reminders if my daughter's lunch account drops below, so I appreciate those reminders multiple ways. I just had a question in terms of on page 34 where it says payment of meals, and then there's the short paragraph about when a student lunch balance reaches zero or becomes negative, all students, blah, 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 will be allowed to charge lunch meals regardless of a zero or negative balance. Is there some way in the information that gets sent home with families in the fall that can be highlighted just more, and maybe you have plans to do that?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Part of the MDE, Food Nutrition Service, and the USDA rules about unpaid lunch charges say that we have to inform the parents, and we always have in the past. It's in the, when you get the free and reduced packet, it's in the front page of the packet, but there's a lot of information on there, but we could sure look at making sure it's highlighted.
I'm just wondering if, given that it's been highlighted so much in the news, that we kind of separately highlight our lunch policy. That might be helpful. And then a follow-up question is the kids' lunch monies or their accounts can advance to the next year, right?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Member Sandsted?
Thank you. Did you want to jump in, Mr.
I just wanted to insert one change that I think our families are going to see is that we're going to have our application for the free and reduced lunch through an online option. It will still exist in the paper form. That's what we've always had. A lot of school districts have done that online, and they've had real good success. You know, there's a fair chance that some number of these families that have an unpaid balance didn't apply for free and reduced lunch, and or they've had a circumstance in their household that has changed over the course of the year, and we just want to give additional emphasis to, you know, have you applied to free and reduced lunch, because that could address some of those circumstances.
That was actually my question. I'm wondering if we have some sort of trigger when people hit a certain point, if they're, you know, owing $50, if they're owing $100, whatever, if we could draw a line where not that we're just sending them a letter, but that we're also saying, hey, do you qualify for free and reduced lunch? How can we help you fill out this application? So that they're not getting deeper and deeper. So I'm wondering where that's at now and if there's any plans to change.
Currently, the student status for the families that have qualified for free or reduced roll over for the first 30 operating days of the school year. So during that 30 days, if we don't see an application come in from those families get an additional mailing, as well as all of the other families who have not applied with us. So we actually do 2 to 3 mailings within the beginning of the school year to reach out to people. Now we're going to have the online application as another avenue, and there'll be information posted on our website, on our child nutrition page. The cafeteria managers work the open houses in the beginning of the school year too, and hand out the information, you know, to families as they come through. In the past, they've handed out the actual application, and now they'll hand out an application in addition to some information about online in case we have families that want to do that.
When we send out a bill saying you have this amount due and it's overdue, do we indicate at that point that people should consider applying for free and reduced status?
Yes, we send out information on PayPAMS, the online payment system that we use here in the district, and then we send out an additional free and reduced application at that time, right in with the bill.
Thanks. Superintendent?
Yeah, I was going to highlight the new electronic form, but also that our principals are working together to develop more involved process in the beginning of the year to make sure that we're getting that out. I think having it in part of the jump start process of the high schools, making sure everyone has a form, conversations about requiring all families to turn in a form where there's a cover sheet that just has the eligibility and yes, I qualify, no, I don't qualify, or I may and I need some help figuring it out, so that all families have that information. It's not only important for the kids to get nutritious meals, but also for different funding sources for the district as well, because it's tied to our Title I funding, our Comp Ed funding, and so that it makes a big difference to us to identify families early before October 1st, so that that funding is also in place. I also want to say that there's a new interactive menu that will be in place, and you can scroll over and see pictures of what the lunch is and all the nutritional information right on the menu online. So it's another draw to the website and the information about that. So.
Thank you. Member Johnston?
A minor question on the snacks or a la carte. I think a la carte is 3 words, and it's 2 words in several spots in A and E. Minor thing. My French isn't very good, but I thought that was 3 words. Somebody could check on that.
I believe it is.
Noted. Thank you. Member Leffler-Kemp.
Yeah. Are families notified once the lunch balance gets to like $10 or something? I think I seem to know that from personal experience. But and they're notified by email, and is that correct?
Families are notified when the lunch balance gets to $10 or below. We chose $10 because if you have a high school student or a middle school student or an elementary student and you use the online payment system, sometimes it takes a few days for it to download to our system. So yes, $10. If they have signed up on Infinite Campus for text messaging or email through the district, they will receive that. We bill once a month at $5 or more from our office through the U.S. mail.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Member Welty?
Yeah, I've done a little quick math and trying to figure out how much the $27,000 uncollected lunch money represented, and looks to me like it represents 10,800 lunches, and I was trying to think what that might mean. My guess is, with some other calculations I was doing in my head, that we probably serve close to 1 million lunches. Would that be close to accurate?
Yes, that's very close.
So we're not collecting money at the end of the year for about 1 in every 1,000 lunches that we serve. So it puts this in some perspective. I would be interested in knowing the percentage that the collection agencies collect, and I'd also like to know how much they actually do collect, because I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these people just leave the community and we never see them again. So if that information could be provided, I'd appreciate it.
Member Sandsted?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight sort of a language clarification thing on page 34. There is the provision in A where students will be given a meal regardless of zero balance. And then C says a student with an outstanding meal charge debt will be allowed to purchase a meal if the student pays for the meal when it is received. And that seems to me to be sort of not entirely opposing the idea of providing a meal, but it doesn't seem entirely consistent. Go ahead.
That's an MDE and USDA regulation. If a child comes through the line and say they owe you $25 for past lunches, but they have the $2.75 in their hand, we have to provide them a lunch for that day and take the cash, and the $2.75 applies to the meal that is happening right now.
Okay. I wonder if there isn't a way to sort of clarify how these two fit together and they don't, how the provisions are not clashing, because it's just, that's a little bit of a muddy reading to me between those two provisions. So just highlighting that.
That's something we can look at. One thing I would like to throw out in addition, you've had a lot of good questions and you may have more, and that's great. In an earlier version of this policy, Pam and I met, and there's a lot that we decided to pull out in terms of detailed information in terms of how the online payment works, detailed payment in terms of where you send the check. All that's good information. The judgment we made was, parents need that. That doesn't necessarily need to be in our board policy. So there may be some things that we choose to add back as we get more questions from you. But in the meantime, understand that we're trying to serve an audience here that is a little different than what we issue to parents every year when they're going through the program.
Chair Kirby?
I just wanted clarification. Now, I understand that at the beginning of the year, people are given an option to sign up. And based on those numbers is where the Title I and Comp Ed money comes from. But during the course of the year, they can also sign up? So it's not just the beginning. And what happens? Are those then counted, or how does that work? Okay.
It depends on the dates.
Right.
I think the relevant dates, and Peggy, Pam, correct me on this, enrolled by October 1st or the first Monday following October 1st if it's on a weekend, and applications submitted and approved by December 15th?
15th, yes. And then anytime during the school year, say someone in the family works construction and they get laid off in January, and at that time they can apply for free and reduced price lunches. They can apply anytime during the year. It just won't count towards your comp ed dollars if it's after D.
Thank you. Member Sandsted?
Yeah, I just have a suggestion. I don't know how realistic this is, but perhaps because we're becoming more online savvy, a nonprofit that I'm been involved with, they at the end of the year have a system where you can get a refund, but you can also donate that refund. And I'm just throwing out there that if at the end of the year, if my kindergartner has $25 back or remaining in his lunch fund, if you give me the option to say, oh, I will donate $10 to cover the $27,000 that's outstanding for other kids, I would probably do that, and other parents could as well. And so if we could do that, that might help take away some of that missing funds.
We've had a couple of individuals donate to cover lunch balances, but we could sure put something online.
Good idea. All right. Seeing no further lights, thank you so much, Pam. Members, this is the first reading. If you have further questions, we can ask our staff. Thank you so much for keeping us on track. Great. The next policy is the next portion. We're on to contracts, change orders, and leases, workers' compensation and property liability insurance policies, and premium designation. Mr. Hassler, page 37.
Thank you. We are fortunate to have Bob St. Arnold from the Marsh McLennan Agency with us. We have had a relationship with that organization to work with our workers' comp and our property and liability insurance for a number of years. And Bob and his agency were directly involved in our process for our renewal this year for those lines of coverage. And one thing I would like to highlight to you in terms of the summary document that you have on page 37, you see there a column reflecting our annual premium for 2016-17, the year just completed, and then the annual premiums for 17-18. The bottom line number that I'm happy to highlight for you is that the total coverage is going to be at somewhat less of a cost to us. Now, along the way, there are different parts of our coverages that are, in some cases, drifting up, in other cases, drifting down. And one thing that was a significant topic of discussion between me and Bob this year was the insurance coverages for our vacant buildings. Insurance companies, for reasons not too surprising, have some level of discomfort as it relates to a vacant building and providing insurance coverage to us. We've tried to take steps to address those concerns in terms of our ongoing oversight of those buildings. We certainly do what we can to have people in those buildings making checks on the systems in those buildings, making sure things are taken care of. But from an insurance company standpoint, that's something less than ideal, and I understand that. The coverages that we're looking at this year for two of our buildings are going to be going through a different carrier, and we had the opportunity to continue with Liberty. Liberty has been our carrier on these coverages in the past, but the cost to us to maintain that coverage through Liberty was going to be a substantial increase to us, and we felt like we needed to evaluate some other options, and we were fortunate to find an option that we think addresses our needs for the protection that we need, but also do so at a cost that is conducive to our budgets. We are also fortunate to see that our workers' comp premium going forward is representing a significant reduction, and that doesn't happen by accident. It's a reflection of what our claims history has been. over a period of time. So our claims have been moving in a positive direction, and our premiums are reflecting that. That's not something we can walk away from. Workers' comp is always going to be sensitive to the claims that we have coming through that program. So Bob and I and others are working with things that we can do to try to hold down those costs. We are fortunate to have a staff person specifically dedicated to addressing safety concerns and following up on workers' comp claims that do come in. And there's a lot you can learn when you understand what claims you're having. You can see that in some cases a particular building may be getting a disproportionate share of the claims that are coming in, and sometimes we can find a condition in that building that is prone to resulting in injury. And through time, we learn better how to address those hazards through really understanding what is creating the issues resulting in the injuries that have occurred over time.
Member Welty.
Yes, Mr. Haslett, this is pretty good news. I do have some questions about some of the things you highlighted. On the vacant buildings, does that include fire insurance, or is that more like that includes fire as well as vandalism and things of that sort?
The peril for fire will be covered, but for the two structures that will be covered under that Cincinnati CSU policy for vacant, vandalism would not be a covered peril going forward. It's a coverage form that doesn't provide coverage for vandalism for that particular peril.
Is CSU a new carrier? Was this formerly part of the Liberty policy, or just something that we've asked for and received as coverage that we felt we needed for those vacant buildings?
Yeah, what Doug and I did, we evaluated what the premium would be if we kept the property coverage with Liberty on those two structures, and the carrier would have commanded about $78,000 more in premium. So really it was kind of a risk-reward. You know, what is the district's insurable interest in two locations that we really don't know at this point what you're going to do with them? So we felt it made a lot of sense to move those two off, since the district is actively trying to sell those properties anyway, and they may not end up being used for educational purposes anymore. So we just tried to strike the best possible arrangement from a coverage perspective and from a premium perspective. So we felt it was time to address that. You know, why should the district pay $78,000 more for properties that they're not going to be used in the future for educational purposes?
I can't fault that reasoning.
Yeah.
Are there any of the other packages, either workers' comp or cyber liability, that were formerly part of the Liberty policy, or have those been separate policies with other insurers too?
Yeah, those have always been separate from Liberty Mutual. We've had Dakota Truck as the work comp carrier. That's the formal name of the company, or Risk Administration Services. They've had a good 8, 9, 10-year run here. And in fact, they were put in place and they successfully came in with a program that was more cost competitive than Liberty Mutual 8, 9 years ago. And we like what they're doing in working the claims and in working with the district's staff to mitigate, return people back to work as quickly as possible. All of that bodes very well for continuing to move the needle in the right direction on the cost of work comp claims. Another item that we're exploring is, we're not quite there yet. We've got 2 or 3 other clinics or other preferred provider organizations that we want to vet. But if the district directs all of their care to a preferred medical provider that specializes in occupational injuries that could be another exciting way to continue to move it in the right direction. We've interviewed one firm, but we want to interview 2 others. There really are only 3 preferred provider organizations for work comp in the state of Minnesota, and we've already interviewed one, but we don't want to make that move until we do our due diligence and interview all of the third-party vendors that could potentially provide that service for the district.
I just make an observation. Kerry Leiter was an old safety expert, and I'm sure he would be pleased by this reduction, perhaps a testimonial to his work in the past. Does this, however, also reflect a reduced number of employees that would be covered by the workers' compensation or not?
That policy is rated based on your payroll. So as payrolls continue to go up an inflationary 3 to 5%, it's driven not necessarily on belly buttons, but on payroll.
So teachers, teachers, non-certified people, all sorts of people are covered under this.
Custodians, drivers, mechanics, clerical staff.
Thank you. Member Oswald.
Since these properties won't be covered for vandalism, what are we going to do to actively deter our vandalism, or have we done, or are we doing, or how does that look?
Mr. Hassler?
We do maintain oversight on the properties, not a 24-hour a day. We have security systems in place at all those buildings. I know we have staff members that check in on the buildings on a regular basis. The central property is a property that is gated, and we felt like that was the best approach for us. That balances our interest in terms of maintaining a low cost for our premium, and also, as Bob indicated, recognizes that a future use of those properties is not likely to be based on the structures that we have now. Those structures would either be coming down for a future property owner and or would be modified as such. But we don't want it to be an eyesore. We understand that. We'll continue to maintain the oversight of the properties that limit the exposure that we would have for vandalism.
Thank you.
Just a follow-up to that, what has been the number of incidences of vandalism in those buildings up to now?
I'd say we get roughly 1 to 2 incidents a month, maybe. That's just off the top of my head without going back and looking. And to maybe add to what Doug just mentioned, typically the vandalism incidents don't result in big numbers of cost. We haven't had anything that's exceeded a couple $1,000s, and we would never reach the deductible if we were fully insured, unless they burned the building down.
You have a $50,000 deductible, so
that's why I think we went to this route, because we would never, in one incident, equal that $50,000 just from vandalism alone. But we do get random acts of windows being broken, kids breaking into a door. I'd say 1 to 2 in a month in the summertime, but in the wintertime not as much, maybe 1 every 2 months in the wintertime. So the colder it is and the snowier, the better.
Thank you. Thank you. Member Johnston?
Sure, I got a question, which I think I know the answer of, but since people keep asking me, I'll ask you. We have no involvement at all in Morgan Park anymore, do we? I mean, if there's vandalism there, they don't call us up. I didn't think so, but just had to ask, since it's still empty, and people always ask about that. Or still there, I should say.
Member Lefferkamp.
Yeah, thank you, Member Oswald, for asking that question about vandalism. Do we work with the City of Duluth Police Department to patrol a little bit more in the areas where we have our sitting buildings?
Permar Security does drive-by patrol for all of our buildings. We pay for that service, and we have full monitoring. We have sprinkler systems. We have smoke detection. All the life safety systems in the vacant buildings are kept up, and we have drive-by patrol by Permar Security.
Thank you. Seeing no further lights, we'll move on to the next one. The University of Minnesota Duluth College and the Schools contract looks like a pretty standard one that we've had in the past. The number of CIT classes we'll be offering through UMD.
That's really consistent with what we've had in the past. That's right.
Okay. Thanks, Bob. Member Welty.
Yes, just to get a good separation in my mind between college and the schools and PSEO. PSEO, our students will go on to colleges and be educated on the college campus. Are the teachers, the CITS teachers, are they ISD 709 employees? In that list on page 40?
Yes.
All of them.
And then the students take those courses with our teachers, and they receive materials and support from UMD or Lake Superior College or Fond du Lac, depending on which place is offering the credit for the course.
Great.
Just looking at the third one there is Economics and Society. Is that last name of the teacher, is that correct?
No.
I wondered. Thank you.
No, that should be Up to Grove.
Member Oswald?
The intermediate German 1 and 2 classes and the weight training classes only list one teacher. Does that mean it's only being offered at one school?
Superintendent?
I don't have the specific answer, but in most cases they are traveling between the schools if there is one instructor for it.
When will we know if that instructor will travel? Because that's kind of important, especially with the German.
Well, I don't have it right now, but it wouldn't make a difference for this contract. But
I'd just like that information when you have it. Thanks.
Member Welty? Great. Seeing no further lights on that, we will move on to the fuel educational products. Is this Dr. Carey or Superintendent?
I believe this is a software that's used in our ALC program. Again, it's something I believe we've used in the past, and we're just continuing to use that service.
Great. Okay. We will continue moving on. Next, the Essentia Health Duluth Heritage Sports Center, page 43.
And we have an existing agreement with the Heritage Sports Center, and under that agreement, there is a provision to extend that through the end of June 30 of 2018, and that's what this provision would do.
Mr. Hessler, can you talk about the history of building this? This isn't just like you signed off. There's been a lot of meetings about this, correct?
I have had communications with them. The Heritage Center program is one that partners us with the Duluth Amateur Hockey Association. So we're not the only occupant of that building. We're certainly a very significant user of that space. As we come to the end of the agreement that this would be an extension to, we will certainly be engaged in future discussions as to subsequent agreements.
Great, thank you. Superintendent?
I just wanted to add that this is also a long-standing contract that was, it did take a long time to develop this as they were developing the original project and all the funders that were involved. And I know that the contracts as well as ice time agreements between all of the different participants is part of that. And so as they develop these contracts, it's a number of different entities and players that are involved, and they're pretty complex relationships and pretty complex contract. We're glad to be able to be a part of it, and also understand that as the school district, we are one of the main participants and users of ice time with all of our hockey programs.
Great. Thank you. Moving on to change orders. Are there any that have come up since the packets come out? Okay. Shake of the head. And then moving on to the placeholder for the Hills, formerly known as Woodland Hills, lease renewal.
I'm working on a lease renewal, a lease document that will go between us and the Hills for the Rock Ridge property. That document is not yet complete, but that is something that I'm hopeful to bring to you in time for the board meeting.
Are there any other updates with regard to the building, or is that this portion or another?
I think we're doing that under facilities management later on in the agenda.
Sorry, I just couldn't remember the two. Great. All right, resolutions, acceptance of donations. Members, any questions on that? Member Johnston?
Yes, I had a question on the Heritage Sports Center, and how much are we paying per year for that?
Mr. Hassler?
Any idea?
I don't have a total figure in my head right now. We are paying based on the number of hours that we're using for ice time, as long as also with, I think we're using turf time there as well. So depending on the number of hours that we're using, we have a rate agreed with them, and off the top of my head, I can't remember what the rate is.
Those payments come out of our high schools?
No, actually, they're coming out of the general fund. And we pay for the number of hours that were used, and we split it between East Denfeld and the girls' hockey teams.
Could you get that total to us, or approximate total to us?
I certainly will.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Member Welty, a question on this or on another item? I know we'd already passed the item prior to the question coming up.
No, this is on the hours.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you asked.
I'm sorry, no, this is on the ice time hours that we charge. Is there a...
So we're back to that item. We had passed it.
Yes,
so.
I'm still on that
Just
one. Sorry. Is there a limitation on the hours, or is there kind of an open bank, and the people who use these facilities, turf or ice time, do they have an unlimited amount of time that they can use?
I don't have instant recall on it, but given that we're not the only user of that ice, we don't have free reign to use it at an unlimited basis. There are other users.
Well, I'm wondering, is there a check? Yeah, is there a...
We'll pass it over to the superintendent, Member Welty.
It's actually the other way around. We're required to purchase so many, and if we don't use as many as we think, then we still have to pay for the unused time. And there is some language in the contract about when people don't use their hours, and if they're not able to cover it, then the school district becomes involved. But we do use the majority of time, as well as DAHA is the other big user, Duluth Amateur Hockey Association. So in conversations that I've had, we've never had a shortage of hours.
Thank you.
Do we ever have...
Member Welty?
Do we ever have offers from DAHA to buy any of our time?
There are times that we've traded sometimes if scheduling works out that way. The school district has first dibs, if you will, on scheduling, and DAHA has specific times as well, so we sometimes will trade our time.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, we're going to move on from that Essentia piece and back to where we were in the agenda. Questions on acceptance of donations. Member Leffler-Kemp.
Yeah, I just had a question on the anonymous contribution to our immersion program. Was it earmarked for anything specific with that program? Just curious.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, seeing no lights on that. Resolutions, acceptance, authorized bank account signers. No questions on that. Minnesota State High School League resolution for membership. Any updates on that? Anything from Chair Kirby? I know that you work with that MSHSL group. Any updates from MSHSL at the state? Okay, great. All right, next to this. Then
I have a question.
Oh, sorry. Member Oswald.
I noticed on the bottom of the pages, let's say 2 and 3, it looks like 48 and 49. There are spots for a local advisory committee members, and that it states above, taken directly from the MSHSL Constitution, that each school is urged to form an advisory committee for league activities. Do we not have advisory committees, and if so, why not?
Superintendent?
Do you want to come up? Sorry.
Assistant Superintendent Starzecki.
Can you ask the question again?
On each of these pages right here, it lists part of their constitution that says 208.03 local advisory committee. Each school is urged to form an advisory committee for league activities. Committee membership is not limited to, but shall include a school board member, a student, a parent, and a faculty member to advise the designated school representatives on matters relating to the school's membership in the MSHSL. And I was just curious.
I am
why
not
we don't
familiar with a local advisory committee, so I'm thinking we don't, and I can't necessarily answer the question why, so I will do a little investigating with our ADs. They probably are the most knowledgeable.
Okay. Thank you for
Sound
looking
okay?
that up.
Thank you.
Okay.
Member Johnston?
Sure. How much do we pay for this? And if we don't have that, could you get that us as well?
I'm seeing
happy to get that
nods
for
of
you.
head. Great. Thank you for sending that along. All right, seeing no further lights on MSHSL, any updates on sale of property at this time? Don't?
Nothing new on that?
Great. Informational expenditure contracts, any questions there, members? Member Oswald?
On page somewhere in here, it was about the contract with Kathy Bogan at Denfeld. I just have to find it. I was curious to know why, since it was signed and implemented way back in February, why we're seeing it now. I can't
Mr.
find the
Hassler?
page yet.
I don't
Page
really have
64. Page 64.
Okay, that's helpful.
There's a note on there, Member Oswald, that says copy for Tanya, original, brought to finance by Tom A. on 2/6/17, or is that 7/6/17?
Looks like 7/6/17, but
So 7, so
it still was dated 2/6/17. Yeah,
so was it actually done in?
I know what this contract was for. It's been long done. That's why
Sure.
I'm curious why we're seeing it now.
Our best information is we've just recently received this.
Member Johnston?
Actually, my question concerns 6E, actually.
Okay, we'll come to that later. We're not on that portion yet, so I'll call. Superintendent, we can update on Member Oswald's question.
I was just going to say that this was a contract that was initiated at the site using discretionary funds. But I see, I'm confused because of the note saying that it was here in July. I know that there was conversation about this contract and why it was coming in late, but knowing it's Kathy Bogan, who we've had a relationship with for a long time, it probably went unchecked for a bit, and then when she asked, it probably came to us.
Okay, I just figured it got lost somehow, but I just was curious as to an explanation. I'm not used to seeing contracts that old. Thanks.
Just a personal question. I think that's the second contracts that's come to us really late this year from high school principals. I think one from each. So just a reminder to them next year on just organization and ensuring that they're getting that along. I know that you guys work on that, but we saw it come from both, and we got some heat as a board for it. So please pass a little bit of that encouragement to stay on top of that part. I know they have lots on their plate, but that would be great if they could turn that in. Any other questions on 6A, expenditure contracts? Member Welty.
Yes, on page 89, Schedule A, Unemployment Cost Management Service Provider, Term and Fees and Service. What is this?
Mr. Hassler or Peggy for Apex?
This is a service that we've used through Human Resources for a number of years now, where this corporation has gone through and looked at the claims that are filed for unemployment, and has saved us quite a bit of funds on that in the last several years.
How does that work? In other words, we have somebody who files an unemployment claim and it may be bogus, and we pay it anyway, and they protect us from paying a bogus claim for unemployment?
Yes, that would be one of the ways it works, plus making sure that it doesn't extend beyond any rehire date that the individual might have for, or hire with another firm.
How long does unemployment compensation benefits last, theoretically, or under the statute?
It has been 3 months, and in some cases it's been extended to 6 months.
Okay. So if somebody was collecting those unemployment compensation benefits but was rehired within a month or so and we kept paying them, that makes good sense. If there's a little history on that from the standpoint of our usage and what this company has found, I'd appreciate getting that.
I'll see if we have something on that.
All right. See no further lights on 6A. We'll move on. I see there are no revenue contracts, cost contracts, change orders signed. And then we'll jump into the facilities management and capital status report, 6E1. Mr. Hassler, if you would talk to that, and then we'll move to questions on the overall report.
I'd be happy to. As the board recalls, the board approved a revised LTFM plan and proposed financing for the Rock Ridge project back at the end of May. Both that plan and that proposed financing is subject to approval through the Minnesota Department of Education. All the documents have been submitted to MDE for those activities, and we have not yet received approval yet. It's a process that takes some time. We're hopeful that will run its course soon. Now further, prior to undertaking any work, it will be necessary for us to seek and to receive a modification in the current zoning for the Rock Ridge School property. Zoning was modified for that property at the request of Duluth Public Schools back in 2014, and at that time the property's use designation was changed to an RP classification, which stands for residential planned. And under that category of use, there's a regulating plan that goes along with that classification that specifies the different activities that will be permissible within that classification. When we submitted that classification for approval, we did not include as part of that regulating plan a school use, because at that time, back in 2014, we did not anticipate a future use of the school as a school. So that is the way it was submitted by us in 2014, and that's the way it was approved by the city. We have been in communication with the Community Planning Division for the City of Duluth about that classification, and based on those discussions, we have submitted an application to amend the regulating plan to include a school use. We are anticipating that we will be going before the Planning Commission on that request in the August 8th meeting, and it is our hope that we will then receive subsequent consideration by the City Council. At this point in time, again, we're still waiting for the MDE approval of our LTFM plan as well as our proposed financing. But beyond that, we do need to resolve the zoning classification issue, and we are hopeful that that will be resolved in the coming month of August. That's what I have.
Thank you for your overview. I think the first slide I saw on was Member Oswald.
You're hoping will be resolved in August. Does this delay or push out the timeline of completion for the Rockridge project?
It's possible that it will. Right now, it's not delaying us because we don't have approval from MDE yet. Or, bless you. We would anticipate receiving approval from MDE here before the end of the month. So from the standpoint that we're not going to be going before the Planning Commission until early August, and we will then need to be on the agenda for at least 2 city council meetings. There is a chance that we will lose a little bit of time as a result of this.
Is it looking favorable that this is just some paperwork issue to rezone it, or are we going to have to possibly consider an alternate plan in the future?
Well, Mr. Spooner and I have met with the Plan Commission folks, and from a Plan Commission standpoint, a school use in an RP classification is not a problem. Now, it is a problem in terms of the regulating plan that we submitted in 2014 does not include a school use. From a Plan Commission standpoint, I can't speak for them, but we believe that it should not be an issue from a technical standpoint. Certainly the community and the neighborhood, the residents in that area, will have opportunity to share their views about whether or not that plan should change consistent with our request. I can't predict what that process will entail, but from a technical standpoint, there were no issues raised when we met with them to discuss our desire to have a school use authorized in that zoning.
And has the Hills been kept in the loop on this, and do they have any objections?
Have the who?
Within the Hills, have they been included
I
in
have
what
not
we're
had
going
conversation with them about this yet.
on? Okay. Surprise.
Is there a plan to?
Yes.
Okay.
I spoke to Jeff.
There you go.
Okay, good. Great. Member Johnston.
Yeah, question on that. Now, do we have a contract with ARI and Cross Anderson? I don't recall seeing that contract.
We have a contract with ARI, and that was board approved. I can't recall what month. It's got to be 2 months ago.
Yeah, that one, I do recall that. But
and specific to Cross Anderson,
That's
we
right.
do not, and that is relating to guidance that's been given to us that we need to wait for MDE to approve the financing first.
That's
okay,
going
so
to be
they're not a general contractor yet, a tentative.
They're tentative under NJPA state contract. It's state
That's
contract,
that
the
one
job
newer.
order contracting. But once we get the approvals that we need, I'll be bringing forth a contract with Cross Anderson that has a number on it that the board will have to approve prior to moving ahead with the project.
And that's, if I recall, you said we were doing some different type of contract on this through the state. That said,
correct.
That process.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Other questions on this process? Chair Kirby?
The workers' comp injuries I notice are high. Is there any feeling or any information on that you think might be going on?
What are you looking at there specifically?
Emergency response, the last on page 108, says injuries are very high for 2017. 21 recordable injuries this year, and last year's total was 21.
In terms of frequency and the number of reported injuries, that would appear to be high, but not all claims are of equal value. And at this point in time, we're still feeling like we're in pretty good shape from a workers' comp standpoint.
Thank you. Superintendent?
I have a question about the workers' comp. If someone is involved in an activity that would not be in their job description or would not be advisable, is it still workman's comp?
I've had some experience with this in prior employment. Oftentimes we are considered to be responsible as long as they are engaged in even in instances when it may go beyond what we would really expect a staff member to do. And with the understanding that I'm talking about a prior school district, you sometimes run into issues with a gym teacher who believes it's best for him or her to fully participate in a volleyball activity, and then you have an Achilles injury resulting from that, whereas it's most appropriate that we have a staff member that may demonstrate a particular skill but then step out of the competition. But those things are oftentimes going to be considered to be our responsibility.
Thank you. Member Johnston was next.
Yeah, question back up on page 107. Can you say anything about any potential Nettleton buyers at all, or what can you say anything?
We have had some activity on Nettleton. Dave, I think we've had at least three different prospective purchasers.
And one more next week.
Okay, well, that's good. Anything on Central at all that we can mention?
There's been some interest, but no offers yet.
Yeah, okay.
Believe me, I'd be the first to let you know.
Well, good. I hope so. We'll keep our fingers crossed on that.
Member Lethbridge-Kemp.
A couple things. One is on page 107, glad to see we have an intern with Minnesota Power and energy auditing, or energy intern, so great. And then on page 108, I was just wondering, you mentioned about the playground inspections were completed, so was everything replaced or the playgrounds in working order for the summer, I guess, because I know they're being heavily used, at least in my neighborhood. And then just any kind of update you can give us on the playground mulch replacement project.
I wasn't sure on your question on the playground inspections, but we do those twice per year with our certified playground inspectors. They have been inspected. Any deficiencies that we find are corrected, so they are safe for the summer. And in regard to the fall protection, we actually have our pre-construction meeting tomorrow at Lester Park, and we'll be moving ahead soon, very quickly.
Thank you for responding to some of those emails we've received. I thought it was diplomatic and connected them to the right people that are in charge of the mulch once it's not ours. Member Welty?
Yes, going back to Dr. Kirby's question about the workers' compensation. When Dr. Kirby noted that, my first thought was the workers' compensation insurance, which had such a precipitous decline in the premium that we were going to be billed. And then I'm just reading through here what the recordable injuries were. There are three of those. One, Achilles injury basketball, which kind of might have fitted in with the superintendent's question about, at what point is something work-related or not, and then wrist pain and a pinched finger. Well, that's 3 of 21. My question is, what has to be recorded? If you have to put a Band-Aid on, is that a recordable OSHA injury?
Good question. In my view, the best practice is anything that might at some point transition into something that would require medical attention or missed time. And it's frequently the case that we become aware of something that's happened and the person says, oh, I'm really fine. And that's okay. I mean, that's if they don't want to seek treatment right away, that's okay. We encourage them to. But in the meantime, we still want to submit what we call a notice-only claim, because in many in more instances than one would like, a day later, a week later, even longer later, that back, my back is still giving me trouble, and it's like, okay. So then we want to be able to go back to the day of when it happened and what the circumstances were and have a good report that we can pass along to the insurance carrier. I don't know if that's fully responsive to your question, but hey, we want to err on the side of over-reporting. And again, when we're reporting something that for somebody who never seeks care, never seeks treatment, never misses time, that's really not going to impact us in a significant way. What impacts us over time is the costs of those claims that do require medical care and or may involve missed time.
And the follow-up question is, the insurance carriers were familiar with these injuries when they offered us the reduction.
They were fully aware. They were fully aware of the injuries, and they're not. They're looking over an extended period of time. It's not forever by any stretch, but it's more than 1 year's time that they're looking at us. We do meet with Marsh McLennan on I believe a quarterly basis to take a look at what claims are out there in that recent quarter period, and maybe what claims have gone back some number of months that are still on the books. Is there anything that we as an organization can do to assist in moving those claims forward and trying to get them resolved? So having an open line of communication with Marsh and having Jason being part of those meetings is very helpful.
Thank you. Seeing no further lights on the facilities management update, Superintendent.
It's all right. Just because it fits under the topic, I know it came up this morning when we came to work. There were some signs out on the sidewalk, and it had to do with a subcontractor that our contractor had signed with, and it was an informational picket, but it's not directly to us. It's more about the contractor and the subcontractor. So, thank you for the update on that. Then we have the annual grants and donations summary. It's pretty well lined out.
That's a different format than what you've seen in the past. In the past, we've shown that on a month-to-month basis, and in my view, it's a lot of information, a lot of detailed information that really did not allow you to see the big picture. This is much more the big picture. You do see a multi-year report here, and you see each of the levels here reflecting federal, state, local donations, and also the total for the various years, so you can kind of see what kinds of trends exist for those different amounts of money.
Thank you. It's nice to see that trend data through the years. Member Sanstead.
Yeah, I have a question about, it looks like the federal grants are down over $1 million, and if there's any particular identifiable reason for that. I'm just curious.
My guess would be our title funding has been drifting downward, and that's been really in correspondence with our free and reduced lunch counts, which returns us to an issue we discussed earlier this meeting, making sure that we are going to every possible length to make parents aware of how they can apply and do so online. Keep those numbers up.
Superintendent?
I also want to say it also reflects that the economy is improving, and so there's not quite so many families. It could be both. So it's good.
It's good news, bad news.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Handful of future items, but seeing no further lights, that's our business committee meeting. We'll see you all tomorrow.